There's been a lot of Pokemon games that have come and gone throughout the years, but I think none of them have entered the scene and left the scene so quickly as Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl. There's 1,000,001 opinions about these games, and I definitely plan to talk about my own in a full review. Of course, I'm not a game developer, and this is all just my opinion, but in the end, I think a lot of people will probably think the same thing that I do. Gamefreak's or ILCA's choice to go with a faithful remake was probably not what everyone was really hoping for. There's just so much hype and love for the Sinnoh games that I think most fans definitely wanted to see the Sinnoh remake blow them away. Not just taking the player on a nostalgia trip, but kind of like a experience Sinnoh like never before type of feeling. And ultimately, I think people did get that feeling with Legends Arceus. Despite some flaws, the overall gameplay experience is really good, and I know I'm not the only one that thinks that. It was so good that it's likely a big reason why BDSP have kind of come and gone so quickly, which makes you wonder, why? Having two games so close together is actually kind of a new thing for Pokemon. So why release these games so close together? Well, to me, it almost felt like they were trying to make it a package deal. Like the intention was to do a Sinnoh remake in two parts. Instead of having a whole new Sinnoh experience in one kinda super mega radiant platinum remake, it was like we had two games, or three, that together would give the whole remake experience. One of a traditional remake that was more in line with previous ones, and one whole new way to experience Sinnoh, but not a remake. And while I do like the games that we got, me and many other fans are kind of itching to see what that Mega Platinum remake could have been. So that's what this video is going to be about, what that Mega Platinum remake could have looked like. But we're going to keep it a little more grounded. Instead of completely reimagining what the games could have looked like, I think it would be better to take what we have with BDSP and talk about some missed potential that doesn't require the game be remade from the ground up. Almost like a Brillianter Diamond and Shiniest Pearl. Some additional features that, in theory, we could even see in a possible DLC update for the games. That is, if Gamefreak hasn't already forgotten. Oh wait. The first and most obvious thing I'm getting out of the way is what I'm calling the Platinum features, including everything that was added to Pokemon Platinum after Diamond and Pearl. This is easily the most obvious missed potential of the whole game. It almost makes me wonder why they didn't do some of this stuff, because it would have been so easy. Again, I'm no game developer, but it's not even like going the extra mile. They literally have the blueprint. Big or small, there are a lot of things that were improved with Platinum. Stuff like the encounter tables were just better, allowing for more variety and player Pokemon accessibility. They kinda fixed this with the Grand Underground, but I still think that the Platinum encounter tables would have been a huge improvement with no extra work. And while we're speaking about no extra work, the Elite Four changes. Yes, they get a little harder with held items this time around, and the teams do change to the Platinum versions during the rematches, but given all the additional benefits of Affection and Global XP shares, I really think they could have started with the improved Platinum teams. There's also some even bigger stuff too that they completely missed out on, and would have been pretty simple. For example, the villa in the postgame area, a little house of your own that you could invest a lot of time into. You could even see characters there like gym leaders similar to the restaurant in the survival area. Even Cynthia and Barry show up sometimes, which makes it all the more special to me. Sure, it's not really important to the overall gameplay at all, but it added that little extra spice to the overworld. It enabled it to feel more dynamic, even if it was just a little bit, altering your environment and improving it with your time and effort, giving the player a chance to show off all their hard work to all the friends they made along the way. Of all the things I suggest, this next one might be the least likely to happen. The Distortion World has always been super cool to me. After putting way too much time into Diamond, stepping into the Distortion World after getting Platinum was like having one of those what-if conversations with your friends come to life. Now, I know there's actually a good amount of people who think this section is a bit slow and unnecessary, and while I think that's kind of missing the point, I do see where they're coming from. It's really just kind of pushing rocks around. However, that's exactly the missed potential I'm talking about. They could have made this into something really fun and engaging. Way better than just a story location you push some rocks around in and never see again. Like, what if they made it a location you could return to after the Giratina encounter in Turnback Cave, and maybe added some features that would make it worth exploring, possibly opening up into different zones. Something like the Grand Underground, but with the physics and geography of the Distortion World. You could encounter Pokemon that you normally wouldn't be able to get in Sinnoh, and could even fit the Shadow Giratina battle in here too. It would also act as an excuse to flesh out the world a little more, and maybe expand on the Lake Trio interactions. Again, not just pushing some rocks, but doing various other puzzles throughout the Distortion World. These puzzles could even tell us about the myths and legends of the Sinnoh region, perhaps rewarding the player with red shards after finishing a puzzle, and getting the chance to craft an Origin Ball as a reference and marketing for Legends Arceus. Alright, they probably wouldn't do the Lake Trio stuff, but like what if... But something that wouldn't have actually taken much time would be the full Platinum Battle Frontier, which consisted of the Battle Tower, Battle Factory, Battle Hall, Battle Arcade, and Battle Castle. Rather than include all 5, the remakes just followed Diamond and Pearl, which only had the Battle Tower. Don't get me wrong, it was probably the most used one, but something just feels missing from the postgame. I remember discovering the other facilities for the first time, thinking that I had pretty much done everything there is to do and see everything there is to see, until I just wandered in and eventually saw these unique character models. I was already ecstatic to have more game to play, but actually getting to the end and seeing the Frontier Brains is one of those things that not every Pokemon player got far enough to experience. It was exciting to go up against these all-star trainers that supposedly served as Sinnoh's top battlers. And if completing these challenges wasn't satisfying enough, one of the coolest references in any Pokemon game ever started right here in the Battle Castle. You see, at the end of every match, this girl, Lady Caitlin, basically tells her butler to give you some castle points. And the whole time you're kind of wondering who this girl is. It's a little strange, but it sets up the player to believe that she's likely going to be the final boss at the end of the challenge. That is, of course, until you get to the end, and you realize that her butler is about to pop off. Entei? What is this woman hiding? If the butler had Entei this whole time, then what could she possibly be hiding back there? The players would never really find out. Well, that would have been the case until the release of Pokemon Black and White, where the players could find Lady Caitlin waiting as one of the members of the Elite Four. In Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl, you'll find the Azure Flute on the ground in your bedroom. And I thought this was a little strange, given that you can use it to literally summon God. Regardless, it was still cool to have it, as many players know that the Azure Flute was an event-only item from Diamond, Pearl, and Platinum, which gave you access to the Arceus encounter. And while it's not impossible to access today, it was never officially given out by the Pokemon Company. So having it at all is definitely an upgrade, but it just seems so lackluster to be sitting here like this. They missed a chance to make a big special event to go along with receiving the flute. But then, how do you give a player a god-summoning flute without just kind of leaving it there? Well, there's this theory that I'm 90% sure came from Birdkeeper Toby, although I can't find the video anymore. He was talking about how he thought the two games, BDSP and Legends Arceus, would have been connected in some way, and that connection would have been with the Azure Flute. The idea was just that you would do something in Legends Arceus, and the game data would connect with BDSP, which would put the Azure Flute in your game, like an event that takes place in 2 different games. The first half would be something like hiding the flute away somewhere in PLA, only for the player to recover it wherever they hid it all those years ago in BDSP. It would have really sold the package deal experience that I believe they were pushing with these games. I talked a little before about Kunishir Island, the first in the chain of islands off the Hokkaido coast. The island chain is actually called the Kuro Islands, and of course, Kunishir acts as the real-life basis for the Victory Road and Elite Four. Now, this might be a bit of a stretch, but I think it would have been the perfect chance to add another Sevi Islands kind of content into the remakes. While I'm sure most people know about the Sevi Islands, it's been quite some time now since Gamefreak's first ever remakes, that being Pokemon Fire Red and Leaf Green. The Sevi Islands are located just off the coast of Vermilion City, and they include a little extra side quest and Pokemon from Gold and Silver to help fill out the Pokedex. It was interesting to me, because it was really the only way you could add additional content to a game back then, by completely remaking it with more stuff. You could really think of the Sevi Islands as Game Freak's first DLC, and now that Pokemon games actually have DLC, seeing that the first one was also an island, it's almost a bit of a trend at this point. So, why not do something similar and create additional islands on the east side of the Elite Four, to match the real-life Kuro Islands? This would be just like how the Sevi Islands are based on the Izu and Bonin Islands. These islands are actually part of a larger group known as the Ogasawara Islands, an archipelago of over 30 subtropical islands to the south of Japan, which themselves take up part of the Izu-Bonin-Mariana Arc system, a tectonic plate boundary which creates a series of trenches, including, as the name suggests, the Marianas Trench. It's these tectonic plate boundaries that give the area around the Pacific Ocean the nickname the Ring of Fire. The boundaries serve as the cause of the many earthquakes and volcanic eruptions around the edges, as well as many other geographical phenomena. In fact, the Marianas Trench isn't the only one. The Izu-Bonin Islands have one, and so does Japan. And would you look at that, so do the Kuro Islands, as all of these are considered to be a part of the Greater Ring of Fire. At this point, the Kuro Islands extension is almost a little too similar. It could start at Shikoten or Itarapa Island, and allow the player to island hop all the way up to Shumshu, and this would be a fair amount to explore. more than enough to find little hideaways and cool secrets for the player to discover. And I know the suggestion is already off the rails as it is, but at this point I might as well commit. I think they could easily go big and include part of the Kamchatka Peninsula as the last part of these new Sevi Islands. Not the whole thing, but just the southern part. By putting just a few towns and routes, it would definitely be enough to be considered like a second post-game area, and could potentially be just as loved as the current one. And all those new areas could give developers a chance to actually get creative with the remake's art style. Instead of having basically everything be predetermined, they would be able to create an environment that really lets the art style shine. Not to mention it could help fill the decks with Pokemon not normally available. Although I wouldn't just want to put a bunch of random ones. Rather, Pokemon that make sense for these kinds of environments. The peninsula itself has more of an open grassy area bordering the outside, but as you can see from the interior, it's actually quite mountainous. But I hesitate to call them just mountains because they're actually full-on volcanoes. 160 volcanoes to be exact, of which 29 are still active. And as if this wasn't enough, the place is covered in snow for about 8 months every year. This has the potential to have some of the most unique wild encounter variety of any location in the series. It could literally be fire and ice type Pokemon living in the same environment, like maybe Torkoal and Camel Boy by the volcanic spots, and Ice Cream and Chubchoos near the snowy parts. And I think it would actually be a pretty cool idea to include Galarian Darmanitan in both areas, which could act as a kind of origin point for the regional form. The ones you find in the cold area could be common and have Guerrilla Tactics as the ability, but the ones you find in the hot area would be rare, and because of the environmental pressures of the volcanic zones, these rarer ones could develop the Zen mode ability, allowing them to take on the fire typing. It's just an idea, but it would really help to make the location unique and memorable. As for what the player actually does there, well, viewers of the channel might already know where I'm going with this. For me, it would just have to be some kind of mission with Regigigas and Heatran. My idea for this is based entirely on my own theory as to how the Veilstone Cape from PLA became the Elite Four in Victory Road area in the modern games. And if that sounds interesting, you can watch the full thing here. But at least for this suggestion, I think they wouldn't even have to make it a big thing. It could be sparse and unpopulated, with just some ruins and off references here and there. Something like the few residents that there are, speaking of an old tale of clashing titans. Or they could go big, similar to the current DLC of Sword and Shield. If it were up to me, I would probably turn it into something like the Regi Trio hunt from the Hoenn games. Now I wouldn't do the Braille puzzles again, with the Wailord and the Relicanth, but I would try to incorporate some reference to it. Like what if the player could put together pieces of various hints and other information spread throughout the islands, that would help to find the Regi Trio's location. Once you find them, maybe by having Regigigas and Heatran in your party, it would unlock the Regi's hidden rooms, allowing the player to enter. Again, I know this is probably way more than we could even hope for, but I think if they really wanted the players to get attached to the remakes independently from the nostalgia of the originals, then they probably needed to do something more along these lines. I know the Sevi Islands were a big selling point back in the day, and I think something similar would have been just as good, if not have even more potential. The Grand Underground was definitely the biggest and newest feature of the remakes, and honestly I think it's pretty cool. It was a great way to allow the player to access a wider variety of Pokemon throughout their main playthrough, and opens up even more after receiving the national decks. But despite the Underground's cool new advantages, we definitely lost some cool stuff too. Each hideaway gives you at least some reason to run around the Underground besides digging, of which has remained almost entirely the same, the only real change being a couple extra items. One of those new findable items being the statues. These items can be used to decorate your secret base, and placing them in there increases the chance to spawn a certain type of Pokemon in the hideaways, depending on which Pokemon the statue is of. It's definitely an interesting mechanic, and gives the player a cool opportunity to alter their environment. However, the feature entirely replaced the old secret base system, which allowed for far more customization, letting you place all kinds of items. It served as a far more tangible method for the player to not only affect their surroundings, but also express themselves, allowing for more creativity to make each player's save file unique to them. Now it's not even a secret base anymore. To be honest, it's just a box with 4 statues. One of the first Wi-Fi features ever introduced for Pokemon was the ability to show off your secret base to your friends, and everything you collected too, or you could fill it up with traps just to mess with them. The really sad part of this missed potential is that it didn't have to be this way. They could have kept the new digging and placement mechanic of the statues, but just made them smaller and allowed for the player to find all the collectibles that you were able to get in the originals. Something like the dolls, or literally any other item, could have affected what type appear more in the hideaways. There was no point in revamping the system like this. And it kind of feels like they completely threw this out. I know a lot of players, including myself, really enjoyed it, and I would have spent hours collecting and decorating, but now these statues are uninspiring at best. I don't want to place 4 big statues that just take up all the space just for me to run around in circles and never come back. At least they come in different colors, right? Throughout the build-up to the release of Legends Arceus, there were a couple of Hisuian forms revealed to give the players an idea of how things would be different this time around. While each reveal they did was pretty cool and sparked a lot of discussion, I think they could have pulled off something even bigger. For those of you who don't know, before the release of the original Diamond and Pearl back in the day, they were also slowly unveiling new Pokemon. One of which was Munchlax. Munchlax debuted in the anime on March 3rd, 2005. And while the episode did occur after the announcement of Diamond and Pearl, it was long before the release. In fact, it occurred as Ash and the gang were headed towards Slateport City in Hoenn, well before Satoshi ever stepped foot into Sinnoh. Now, what if they did something kind of like that, but instead of revealing it in other media like anime, they do it in another game? Like I said before, BDSP and PLA both kind of seem like they were meant to be a package deal. And what better way to cement that idea than to reveal some Hisuian Pokemon in the remakes? I mean, BDSP did release a couple months beforehand, and it would have been the perfect marketing, a fun way to stir up hype and discussion before the next release. Not to mention that the games already have a built-in excuse to include them, as fossil Pokemon. Now, I know that it can take up to 10,000 years for organic matter to fossilize in the first place, meaning that Legends Arceus would be too recent, as it's speculated to only take place about 200 years ago at most. However, a little suspension of disbelief never hurt anyone, and would be acceptable in my opinion. Just throw in 2 or so, maybe 1 for each game, and boom, cool reference for the fans and free marketing for the Pokemon Company. It's a bit of a simple idea, but the remakes don't need to reinvent the wheel on all fronts. Sometimes it can really be the smaller stuff that makes a good Pokemon game into a great one. But to be honest, I actually like BDSP quite a bit. I know that's an unpopular opinion to have right now, and I don't blame anyone for being disappointed with the end result. Despite the fact that I just ripped on the game all video talking about its missed potential, I ultimately don't think the games are even close to the worst in the series, and I still think they were pretty good overall. I knew my whole new Sinnoh experience was coming in January with PLA, so for me it was a fun, simple, nostalgic walk through my favorite region, updated to fit in line with all the modern Pokemon games. It honestly does pair pretty well alongside PLA as a package deal. I just wish they did a little more to give the fans the experience they were looking for. And with Gen 9 already upon us, I doubt they're gonna do any more with these games. Which is too bad, because if you couldn't tell, I think these remakes could have been great. So what missed potential did you spot for Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl? And how would you improve the remakes? Let me know in the comments below. I hope you all enjoyed the video, and thank you all again for watching. Like if you did, sub for more, and I'll see you all next time. Peace.